Hello. Today I'm going to talk about the importance that nutrition has played in the development of the biodiversity of our species and the influence that it has had on genetic variation and genetic mutation within our species. Nutrition is one of the most fundamental aspects of all life, all organisms, all living beings, and humans are no exception to that. Without nutrition, human beings do not have the adequate chemical properties to make their bodies work in the way that they need to. The nervous system, the heart, the brain, the muscles, the lungs, everything in the body all depends on nutrition and energy. Because of this link between nutrition and survival, there is a great stress on the body to make changes due to nutritional needs or insufficiencies in order to increase our chances for survival. One of the best examples of this would be lactose tolerance. Traditionally, people were unable to process the sugars from milk at all after being through their primary developmental stages as a newborn. And once they were done nursing, they were no longer able to handle the sugar from milk. But there was a mutation in a gene which gave the enzyme lactase the ability to process that sugar, lactose, from the milk. And because of this, people who were in certain areas like Europe and certain parts of Africa who had access to cows and dairy and depended on milk and dairy for survival, their bodies changed and adapted over time to allow the body to continue to process milk and continue to take the nutritional benefits from milk. And because of this, people in those areas and those groups of people have a tendency to be lactose tolerant, which allows them to take the benefits needed for survival and utilize it to their advantage. When other groups of people in different environments in different parts of the world did not have opportunity and access to these types of resources, they never had the need to develop that. They never had the need to have a mutation or a variation to allow them to process the sugar from the milk. Because nursing was very complicated and it took a lot of physical demand, a lot of caloric demand, and a lot of other nutritional needs that are not just widely available, specifically in early development of human beings. There was a lot less access to resources and food in times far beyond ours that we have access to now. Another great example of this would be of genetic variation and genetic change and mutation through nutritional needs would be the differences in our color of our skin, which was one of the most enlightening things that I've learned during the course of this class, and I think it's a very important point to be made for us to all understand, so we all can understand how we are more of the same than different. I think that would be a great way to break down barriers in people and destroy one of the most destructive things that exists in racism in today's society and in society through all of time. And because of the amount of sunlight in Africa, there is a lot more melanin. But it is not solely because of the UV rays, but because the sunlight in such excessive amounts destroyed the folic acid and the folate in the bloodstream. So, because of this, their bodies adapted and developed more melanin. And they had a reason to have that mutation. It allowed them to absorb less vitamin D, but there was already a plentiful amount of vitamin D. But when people went to areas north and people migrated north to Europe and to those parts of the world where there was less UV, but there was also less vitamin D available, so they needed less melanin, because otherwise they would not have one of the most essential components of life, vitamin D, which is another essential vitamin. And then in people like Inuits and people who have probably crossed over the Bering Strait and settled in parts of Canada and Alaska, they continue to maintain some darker pigments, although somewhat lighter, because their diets, like with salmon and liver, were high in vitamin D. So for these reasons, nutrition has made one of the biggest impacts on our world through biodiversity and the influence it's made on genetic variation and mutation. And I think that the more people that understand these differences that exist between us are less of a reason to despise another, but more of a reason to be appreciative of the beauty that exists within all people, within every person in our species. And I think that's one of the most powerful things that I've learned in this class.